Yay! It's Sunday night. It's Sunday night. Best night of the week. Yay! Gonna answer all the questions, burning up the hearts, minds, and souls of our runners in the Fitness Protection Program. My name is MK Fleming. I'm the founder of the Fitness Protection Program, and I'm not exaggerating at all when I tell y'all this is my favorite time of the week. Sorry to be a couple minutes late. You can't smell what I smell right now, but the kids downstairs are making chocolate chip cookies with their new sitter, and so trying to stay out of that has been very difficult. All the lights in here haven't been working, so every time I open the door, I'm like, trying to stop myself from going downstairs. So we're going to answer some questions. I'm going to give y'all a deep thought. We're going to talk a little bit about what's coming down the pike. And then who knows what will happen. I don't even know what's going to happen, and it's my show. So here we're going to start with the deep thoughts. And if you checked your email this week, if you found all the emails from me, and evidently some of you guys did not, sorry for that. Please check your spam folders. If your account is in good standing, meaning you're paid up for the month, then and your subscription is active, then you should have received a series of calendar invitations. One to the Zoom the Zoom chat that we did on Friday. For those of you who were like, I was zoomed out at that point of the day, I feel you. I get it. It's never a mandate for you to show up. It's just a promise that I will. And I've made promises to be showing up twice a month for Zoom calls going forward. And I'm also, in addition to this, but we might be switching up the format a little bit. They're looking at different options. Also, you should have received an invitation to our holiday party, which will be, unfortunately, due to the year, a Zoom call. It'll be happening on a Friday evening, though. And you should have received the invitation to the year ahead webinar, A Return to Hope, where we look back and count up the wins in 2020 while looking forward to 2021 with more hope than we might have thought possible 2 or even 3 months ago. There's still a lot of uncertainty, but with certain decisions already made and behind us, there's no good reason not to have hope for the future or things to look forward to on the calendar going forward. Lots of options, lots of good things coming down the pike of fitness protection. I'm excited to share them all with you. So with those updates aside, hopefully we see you at the next Zoom call, next meeting. But my deep thought for the week has to do with burnout. So at this point, I have been doing a lot of talking with my protest kids, and you might have seen the Twitter thread that I posted in the Facebook groups the other day. But we've been talking about burnout because the problem with burnout is that it's familiar, and it's something that, especially as parents. Now, Dan Felton, you might be feeling a little bit of this too. Get into this a little bit longer. Dan's a new dad, y'all. I got a 2-year-old straight out the box. And the longer you're in this, the more familiar these things will become. You hear a familiar scream, your brain knows exactly how to respond or what to expect. You hear the sound, that's the hungry cry or the angry cry or that scream. That only happens when your kids are in deep doo-doo with each other. You know the different sounds, and you can not only can your brain identify them, which can be really surprising to your friends who are not as familiar with these sounds as you are, but also you go right to the reaction because it's so familiar and you've been there before. PTSD works a lot in the same way. I'm not saying that we're all feeling this right now, but the PTSD has to do more with burnout. Runners tend to be planners and overachievers, and looking into a future with a little bit of uncertainty is one of the scariest things many of us will do. Not to say we're control freaks, but the one thing we do control or have control over is the calendar. How are we supposed to get everything done if we don't know what's coming up, where we need to be, when the COVID restrictions are going to be lifted? What am I supposed to do with my kids? What am I supposed to do with myself? There's so much that seems to be going on right now, especially as we go into a holiday season that's going to feel incredibly unfamiliar for many. Or, there are a whole bunch of people that are just not paying attention to the pandemic as well and are going to do whatever they want to do. And that's okay. So I'm not talking to you if you're one of those people. For the rest of us at this point where we feel like there are so many demands that are impossible to meet, and you've kind of accepted, I'm going to fail at something. A couple of the balls that I'm holding and carrying up, they're going to be dropped. So accepting that means I am failing. Even if I'm succeeding at 5 things, I'm failing at one other. And that can be really, really hard to reconcile. It's probably not the first time you felt this way. Instead of counting your wins, looking at yourself and saying, hey, look at all these obstacles I've had to navigate, this crazy needle that I've had to thread. And yay, damn it, I did a great job of that. We're only looking at the things that we're failing, the things that we elected not to do. So I'm going to beg you, as we go into a little period of PTSD, to go easy on yourself, which is a stupid thing to say. What does that mean? I'm failing. I don't fail. How am I supposed to not care? How am I supposed to care less? Most of my life is trying to get people to care more. That's that feeling that you might be feeling right now, or at least I'm feeling, and know a whole lot of people are feeling it. It's very real. And that's the effects of PTSD. Those are the effects of burnout. Now, PTSD sounds really dramatic. Anytime we've ever discussed PTSD, it has probably been in a context that didn't apply to us. We talk about soldiers in the front lines of World War II, being in the trenches. We use all these really super outdated military references that don't do anybody any good, because we haven't fought in trenches since World War II. Really, a couple of times in Vietnam, but not really. Does make for a good movie, but that's not how it happened. Ask anyone who was there. And to that end, right, that means that we need to change what we think PTSD is and who possibly could have it. If you are a woman with ambition, and you know this feeling because you've been here before, how am I supposed to do all of this perfectly? Any failure that I make will be held against me more so than it will other people. And by the way, these other people aren't doing all the extra work that I have to do just to be here right now, to have this seat at the table. They don't have to deal with the sexual harassment or trying to deter any type of sexual harassment that could come your way at work. They're not having to deal with the sick kids at home. They're not having to deal with all that it took for me to be here, the fact that the clients don't want to talk to a woman, what have you. There are a whole host of things. We call it emotional labor, the invisible work that protected classes that we need to start protecting better have to endure that others just don't, which is not necessarily to demonize the white man, but rather to say, like, hey, there's stuff that actually happens that you don't see because it's not your problem, but that doesn't make it any less real. Asking for extra help, if you're like me, I've been in places like I don't have any trouble communicating what I need. Shocking, right? You wouldn't believe how many times I've asked for help, not gotten it, and then been lambasted later for not asking correctly. There's always a reason not to give me what I asked for that comes back to me, to my behavior, to you didn't make me see. You didn't make me respond. You should have made me, like, I'm not just responsible for asking and advocating, but also somehow getting your attention in a way that doesn't alienate you from wanting to work with me in the future, as though that is possible or exists. This point of burnout where you just say, I can't go on, for me at least, the last time I felt this way was in the corporate world, when I was being asked to do more than the people around me with not enough resources to get it done. And it felt endless. Before that, it was my previous job. Before that, it was college. This feeling of burnout where I was just like, I got zero fucks left and nothing left to give. And even if I did, it wouldn't make a difference anyway. It wouldn't reduce my workload. There's no point in sight where there will be less for me to do. That leads to apathy, where your brain all of a sudden just says, nope. Why bother? Not worth it. And that is not a lack of motivation. That is not a problem to be solved. That is your brain protecting you. That is your body doing exactly what it was designed to do. So if you're waking up in the morning and you are feeling like you are burnout, if you are feeling like you just can't do anything and you're wondering, like, where am I going to get this motivation? I want you to hear my voice in the back of your head reminding you that you are perfectly made. Even if you're not a Christian, if you are a Christian, or if you've had a baby ever, someone probably gave you a blanket with this quote from the Bible sewn into it. It's one of my favorites. I chucked away most of the Christianity, but there are a few things that I kept. This is one of them. You are perfectly made. I believe that for every person. Your body and your brain are perfectly rational, completely efficient, mind-bogglingly good, well-made machines. And if we were to operate from the basis that you were perfectly made and every decision you ever made was the right one, and were to take you at your word and give you the resources that you asked for, odds are pretty good you wouldn't feel burned out, because you wouldn't allow yourself to get to this point. The only reason we've gotten to this point is because we have sought inputs and not received them, or we've been ignored. We Knew This Day Was Coming. And why in the world would you do anything about it when there was nothing you could do to stop this day from being here? Again, I would argue that in and of itself, on top of everything else, is perfectly rational. So if you are waking up in the morning and you're feeling a little bit more of this, if you're watching live, you can see I just changed the label underneath. It says depression. We talk about depression in a way that I really don't like, and I want to reframe this conversation a little bit for you in your head. We talk about depression like big sad, to use the Generation Z terminology, like a big sad that's too big to carry. Fiona Apple described it as a heavy black balloon, and that every once in a while you play with and you can't stop playing with it because it's just so heavy. I think of it a little differently, although I do like the black balloon analogy. Think of it, every time that black balloon hits the ground, it leaves an indentation. Then whatever is underneath it isn't going to function. So if we think about that indentation, like events like this where you become burnt out, creating an indentation in your brain that hinders or depresses your brain's functionality. And we think of depression as depressed brain function, as a condition brought on by events, and as opposed to a problem specifically that needs to be solved. Then it changes things a little bit. It becomes a little bit more interesting. We say, hey, my perfectly made body's doing exactly what it was meant to do. I'm recognizing a situation that I've been in before where nothing I do is really going to change the outcome. I'm bracing myself for what's coming next, and my body is conserving its energy by telling me that I need to not move. It's taken away my get up and go because it wants me to sit still and rest. It wants me to think. It wants me to eat the ice cream. It wants me to watch the Kardashians. It wants me to turn my brain off and not worry about this thing that's coming no matter what I do. So instead of allowing me to participate in my normal distractions, which ramp me up, it is going to stop me from doing anything that I would normally do. It's going to grind my brain is going to grind my body to a halt. So when we think about depression from that perspective, again, to me, that becomes much more interesting and way more empowering. Instead of feeling guilty for feeling lethargic or tired, like I haven't run in 5 days, you guys, and I don't care, because I think of it like not, oh my gosh, woe is me, I'm depressed. Because again, you caught depression, you're a failure. The way we talk about it's kind of ugly, but rather, I have depressed brain function. I'm doing exactly what my body wants me to do. I'm doing what Coach MK says, which is that listening to your body is the most advanced thing a person could ever do. Guess what? I'm doing that. And you might be doing a whole lot more of that than you've ever done before, because we live at the crux of hustle culture and diet culture. Hustle culture says, go, 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 go. You could be doing more. Why didn't you do more today? I mean, if we look back at the cracks in your day and we were to fill it with stuff, you could have done so much more. 5 minutes a day adds up, and that becomes like 5 million years over the course of a year if you really lived that year well. Looking and shoving productivity into every crevice of our lives, that is going to lead to burnout because we never build in rest. I have rest in my calendar, and it's sacrosanct. That's what my run has always been. I'm going for my run. It is my downtime. I'm going to get my downtime today. In a year like this, where my run is not my downtime, and I need something more than a distraction outside the door in order to shut my brain and my body down. And those days I'll just take a nap, or I will go for a walk around the neighborhood and play Pokemon Go. There are a variety of things that I will do. Watch The Crown season 4. Have you seen it yet? It's amazing. I will watch a crappy Christmas movie with my husband, who is no longer traveling and trying to take advantage. We're going to carpe another diem. I don't know how many I'm going to get to have with him, but he's really cute and it's fun. So to that end, instead of berating myself for what I didn't do, I celebrate what I did. I recognize that depression is a verb, right? So my brain, it is not a depressed brain. Its function, the depression in my brain that is compressing its function, is a response to very real events, because my brain is perfectly made, just like the rest of me, and it's doing exactly what it was designed to do, which in moments of incredible stress when I'm overwhelmed, feeling a little bit of burnout or a whole lot of PTSD, because these feelings that I feel are not only real, I have experienced them before because of the demands of capitalism or what have you, all of it. I need to be reminded that I can jump into the winning at life cycle at will. The winning at life cycle begins by listening to your body and saying, you know what? I don't want to do that thing. And instead of berating myself for it and feeling really guilty, like, because who wants to do the dishes? I'm going to do the thing that I want to do, which might be lie down and eat my thing right now, Country Ranch nut thins. They sound disgusting, but I promise you, I do not think of them as disgusting when they're in my mouth. They make me incredibly intensely happy. So I'm going to lay on the couch, I'm going to watch The Crown, and I'm going to eat this thing and have this good taste in my mouth. And I'm just going to go with that. And that I'm able to do that is a privilege. And that is why I'm winning at life. I am electing to do and to create the space for myself to rest, which so many right now will not be able to do, even though they desperately need it. And for that, I'm winning at life. I am, by doing this now and taking care of me, it ensures that I'm going to be here tomorrow. And for that, I'm winning at life. And my kids having a mom or a parent that will do this at all means that they are winning at life. And so am I for being here, and so on and so forth. So the winning at life cycle is when we start counting those wins and asking ourselves, instead of your interpretation of it, what would I say to you? And hearing my voice at the back of your head saying, who cares? Oh, you're tired? Sit. You don't want to run? Okay. And here I get this, the irony of a run coach telling you that it's okay not to run. We're going to have all kinds of programs coming up. Slow Burn's going to be released at the beginning of the year. We're going to open up sales on that pretty soon. I'm going to be leading it with a coterie of other people. We're going to make it more comprehensive and more fun than it was the last time. We're going to be adding more features to it because I figure a lot of people will be doing this only for the strength and are not going to be running at all. So we want to make sure that whether you're running or not, you're not looking at it as, well, I'm not using this piece. Rather, you look at this really robust program. No single person is going to be expected to use all the parts of it. Not about, don't judge the value by like what you expect to do, but rather what we're going to put into it. And by that measure, we promise you, you're going to have a really good time. So when we think about the winning at life cycle, it starts there, counting up the wins, dealing with the rest of the fallout and the burnout. That's going to take a while. Back to that depression analogy. Something hits even like my Tempur-Pedic bed and leaves an impression or a depression because it's this way. It's going to take time for it to fill back up to normal. And again, if you think of your brain that way, after a period of extended crisis, extended uncertainty, extended trauma, extended anxiety, that is going to take a toll on your brain, on your pituitary gland, because, by the way, all of this is regulated by your pituitary gland, which produces adrenaline as well as cortisol. Cortisol is the stress hormone. In times of incredible stress, when these depressions in your brain are created, your brain is kicking out tons of cortisol, which in return causes your amygdala, the center of your brain that controls emotions and regulates sleep, to enlarge. It goes from the size of a walnut to considerably larger than that. It can expand up to 3 times its normal size due to cortisol. Doctors correct me if I'm wrong there, but that is what I've been saying for a while. The big old thing in your brain. It goes from this size to this size. And the rest of your brain doesn't have quite enough room. So that as well is where some of the compression and the depressed brain function comes in. What you're feeling is very, very real. It's physiologically valid and it's backed by science. So rather than thinking of it as shame or a moral failure, your body's perfectly made. There's nothing to be ashamed of. Every choice you've ever made is the right one. You're coached, you're loved, you're winning at life, and you have been. We're dealing with all of this together. We're going to get through it together. If you're not running right now, awesome. You know what? You're going to get more Coach MK in your face reminding you of this, that you're winning at life. So whether you're running or whether you're not, it's not about that. It's about me showing up. I promise to you that I'm not going to stop doing that. It's about being more regular no matter what's happening in my life, which has finally gotten to a more manageable place in the past couple of weeks. And more than anything, it's about leaning into this community because, like I said a long time ago, when I first stood on a track and looked around and thought, what do these people want from me? The stunning realization that I came to very quickly was that I was probably the only person in their lives that told them that they didn't suck. They would ask me questions it was this okay, knowing what I would say. Oh, I knew you would say that. I just needed to hear it. And I hear that over and over. So if you're not hearing this anywhere else, then there's your $1 a day value. I'm going to tell you, and it's not BS because I believe it, that every choice you've ever made was the right one. It doesn't mean it was an easy choice to make, because I know how high the consequences can be to saying no, especially even though I'm near the top of the food chain, I'm still a woman. I'm a scary woman with big opinions and a big mouth and not really afraid of very much at all. So if I am still facing these consequences, imagine what it's like for everybody else. Anything that you feel is very, very real. Your gut is great. Your brain is rational. And that's why we need to lean into this community and each other while we wait for that depression to lift, that thing in your brain to return to normal, for your pituitary gland to stop being in overdrive, and for your maldia to shrink back to its normal size. Final note on that. Just because you're perfectly made doesn't mean you could not benefit from therapy or drugs. Remember, this time last year, I was very open and honest about the fact that my central nervous system had been in overdrive for so long. I had been so stressed, I'd been so scared that I would never live without pain again, that we had to put me on Lexapro to calm down my central nervous system. And it was amazing. As soon as we did, I felt the pain in my chest was gone. I could sleep better. I didn't realize how much anxiety I had in my body and was carrying in my muscles, again, which requires more stress and strain on the central nervous system, that my body could not go back to normal. It needed a little bit of help ramping back down, and drugs were amazing at doing that. So don't judge yourself by needing drugs. It's not about how broken you are. It's about the load that you've been carrying. And all of us have been carrying a much larger load than any human should ever have to carry this year alone, and we're nowhere near finished. So with that, cortisol, I'm assuming it's probably Dr. Andrea, the doctor joining in. Cortisol primes the brain to process stressors and non-stressors differently in more stressful ways. Yep. Okay, I'm going to circle back to this question. Don't let me forget. Cortisol, again, it's known as a stress hormone, and this is absolutely correct. Also, it's important to remember that the brain does not differentiate between eustress, which is positive stress, and negative stress. It's all the same physiological reaction. When you are extremely negatively stressed, we think of that as trauma. When you're extremely positively stressed, that's euphoria. Like, you won the lottery. You're probably not going to be able to think very clearly. Your executive function is going to stop completely while you just kind of stand there wide-eyed. And it's sort of the same thing when you're facing a lot of danger and your brain is bombarded with PTSD, or is bombarded with trauma. So as few of us will ever be lucky enough to stay in an extended period of euphoria. Rather, we have all collectively been in this space of anxiety, dealing with huge amounts of cortisol on the regular, and it's going to take time. I would say that between now and the end of the year, let's just think of that as managing the burnout while we get ready for a rebuilding year. Luckily, we have a program for that called Rebuild. Boom, boom, boom. Just saying, though, in sports, we would think of this year coming up absolutely as a rebuilding year. So give yourself that kind of space too, and get excited about it. There are no expectations. We're going to have a whole nother year without races. What are you going to do with that year? Instead of making artificial to-do lists, filling your time with productivity, waiting for pats on the head that are never going to come. And if you like making sourdough bread, great. But I know so many people who are like, I'm going to read all the books. I'm going to make sourdough bread. I'm going to learn a foreign language. They just and they're looking at the end of this year thinking, I didn't finish any of those things, and they're feeling bad about themselves. Y'all know how I feel about New Year's resolutions. I'm here for Romuel. We're going to roar into the new year by counting up and screaming our wins. And what do we want more of in 2021? And you know what? I'm good that we got one more year without races, because there are some things that I definitely want more of next year. But I can't lie, there's a whole lot I'm happy to leave behind at the same time. If I watch Paper Tigers, I've not seen that. I'm going to make a note of it really quickly before we go any further. 2015. Oh my gosh. That is going to take a glass of wine and a little time. Probably not going to do that tonight because we got The Princess switched again. or something on Netflix. My husband is really excited about it, and so is my daughter, and we watched it yesterday, but they want to see it again. I might be sitting upstairs either finishing Warrior on Cinemax. I've got 2 episodes left, or rewatching season 1 of The Crown, which I just thought was amazing, and I want to go back and absorb and soak in all the details, because I remember where I was when I heard that Princess Diana passed. I remember where I was and what I felt watching her wedding to Prince Charles when I was too little to remember anything else, because it was the same year, I think, that Sally Ride became a household name. So with all that, before we get into big sad, let's get into some questions. So yay, here we go. It's moving to Ask Away. We're going to start by counting up the weekly wins by all the clients in each of our programs. We got Build and Rebuild, which are sister programs. Build is a transitional program for new runners who are either new to running or new to me. You will be treated like a new athlete here. If you are Rebuild, is a program that was designed for people with a modicum of experience who don't want to be treated like the new kids, that have enough knowledge of the nomenclature and the verbiage that they could just jump into into a training program theoretically, and be able to move forward. Doesn't mean you want to have questions. Questions are always welcome. It's just there have been periods when I've been recovering either from injury or pregnancy, and the most appropriate plan for me to be on was a Couch to 5K, but I didn't want to be with all the new people because I actually had experience. Rebuild sorts them as a big sorting hat for it's the same program, but 2 different communities that hopefully will serve everyone equally well. Then we also be taking questions from our runners in Maintain, which is a program for anyone who has a modicum of fitness they want to maintain, and as well as weekly wins, from our friends in Runner Interrupted, which is a support program, including texts, daily texts from me, emails, and daily journaling prompts for runners whose journey has been interrupted for any reason whatsoever. We have people in there who are pregnant, who are recovering from pregnancy, who are managing cancer or injury or IEP season for a whole lot of people. There are many, 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 many valid reasons. We're never going to judge a reason ever why a runner's journey may be interrupted. What we are going to do is support you through it and make sure that your return to the running world is as smooth and as seamless as it could possibly be. I would much rather stick with people through these periods and help guide their return than have them show up, not quite be ready, and then be kind of pushing them backwards when all they want to do is run forwards. So as I break everything on here, because it's Friday. It's not Friday, it's Sunday. Oh my God, what did I just say? I don't even know what I'm saying. Might get that distracted when my husband walks in. So weekly wins in Rebuild. Amanda Bailey's husband is taking some time off to help with their kids who are out of school again because of the pandemic. This time means more breathing room for both of them and more sleep and running for Amanda. Yay, you! That is huge, Amanda. I gotta say, I'm married a man who traveled for work. I knew this. When you're coming out of the business school that we attended, people either become bankers and never come home, or they become management consultants and never come home because they're always traveling. Investment bankers don't travel. They're usually stuck at work and never come home to shower, not even sleep, and then go back to work. So I knew what I was marrying, and I loved it. When I was younger, I had no problems with it. But then after we had children, it started to take a toll on both of us. So I've never had a full-time at-home husband, and it's fun. Oh my gosh, having him here all the time is fun. Going to sleep next to somebody is really fun. It's nice to have the company. I had no idea what I was missing. So sounds like you have been missing quite a bit, and I'm excited that you are going to have a house husband with you to entertain you and split time with the kids. And the best part, I hope you're able to find some time to play hooky, because my husband and I started doing that. I'm like, do you have a little time? Let's go on a Pokemon walk. And we'll lay in bed, eat ice cream in the middle of the day, and watch an episode of we started watching more TV together, like Warrior on Cinemax, or I can't quite get him into The Crown. He cared about it when Winston Churchill was in there, and since then he's like, no thanks. So, but it's fun to be a rebel and just be like, you know what? I feel like rest. I'm going to be working until 10 o'clock. I've got an hour. Let's rest. To do that together is kind of invigorating and fun, which, I know for a whole lot of people, it can be horrifying having your spouse and children home all the time. But I do hope that this will mean breathing room, and I hope you're able to have a lot of fun with each other while you're at it. Kristen Frazier is making space for more boundaries with her loved ones, which has been good for her mental state. I see this a lot too. My husband and I both come from really small families. We are, each of us has one sibling who never married, never have children. Each of our mothers and fathers, we're one of two where one sibling never married, never had children. We have literally no cousins. We have second and third extended cousins, but no immediate family. So it's always interesting for me because I know like what that feels like to have zero first cousins and the shock where people are like, really? So I wanted to give that to my kids. Are going to all have my grandchildren will all have first cousins, hopefully. We'll see. Who knows? But with 4 kids, you're kind of changing the game there a little bit. So I tell you that to tell you this. I have no idea what your world is like because I've never had to push back loved ones. I've never had that large of a family. But I can imagine because I hear the stories and I hear the jokes, the nomenclature about the mother-in-law or the in-laws or the pushy older sister that just wants to stay out of your business. So whatever you're able to do to hold on to create and enforce, because enforcing boundaries with families can be really tough. That much I do know, that regardless of size, saying no and holding the line can be really, really hard. Changing those patterns of behavior, almost impossible. So good for you for doing whatever you have to do to protect your mental state during this period. Yeah, I'm not just whistling Dixie on travel. I'll tell you, travel's tough. Travel is tough. I kind of liked it, though. I liked it when he traveled. But then we had kids, and they were all like, when's Daddy coming home? And now Daddy's been home for so long, I don't know how he's ever going to go back on the road. It'll crush our kids. So I'm low-key excited that we've got nowhere to go in 2021. Like, more Daddy home all the time. Okay. And then in May, Melissa Yakuzo is back and rebuilding. We've missed you, Melissa. Welcome home. I know you've been dealing with a lot too, but we're proud of you. We hope that some of the worst is behind you, and we're going to clap and celebrate and cheer as you come through the other side. In Maintain, Sarah Seberg has been having to do more inside runs, but the treadmill is growing on her. You have a treadmill? I'm jealous. I want pictures. Our house is 180 years old. You heard that right. It's old. It still has the floor plan. And we haven't changed the footprint of the house at all. And it is super tiny. With this ceiling feels normal, but promise you downstairs, you would think it's like a tiny house that people were much shorter back then. So to that end, we don't have space anywhere for a treadmill. Like we barely had enough space for a kitchen table. And that was only after we moved everything around. So yay. I know it's easy to hate on the treadmill, but if it's an option and you have one, know that I am jealous of you. So that means I'm jealous of you, Sarah Seberg. Yeah. All right. Now we're going to move on to the questions in rebuild. Is there a foam rolling move for the hamstrings? I'll go and dive into the rest of the question in a minute. No, we'll also get into the why. Is there a foam rolling move for the hamstrings? Mine feel tight and sore, so I was wondering if I could torture them with some foam rolling. I can't believe I'm asking for more foam rolling. Let me tell you about foam rolling. We are getting ready to put together a mobility challenge from now to the end of the year, instead of having the holiday fundraising challenge, because I know that so many are going to be so tapped out this holiday season. And you've probably had so many emails, so many bombardments asking for money to get through. By the way, thank you for continuing to fund my small business. I'm thrilled that I haven't had to. I appreciate everyone who's stuck with us and stuck it out all year long. So we are going to be doing a mobility challenge to help roll out some of the stress, release some of the tension from our muscles so that we can hit the ground running when Romuald comes along. When it comes to hamstrings, they are little bitty muscles and they work together in tandem. They're like supporting players. And the only reason they would be overstrained is if you were asking more of them than they were ready to do, 1. Or 2, you needed a little more glute strength or new shoes, something inefficient was happening in the kinetic chain. So to that end, the foam rolling is about pressure working out the fascia. And trying to address this overstrain on the foam roller is not going to be the most efficient unless you have really something very heavy that you can put on top of your thighs while you roll. Generally speaking, it's hard to get your entire body's weight on top of your hamstrings. Even if you were to try to sit crisscross applesauce, I don't even want to think about it, and then you'll only get to the side. The way that I would help people roll out their hamstrings or demonstrate this back when we were able to do foam rolling live at Run Colorado, when I started off as a coach, I would sit on their laps. I would sit on their laps and hold my ankles in the air, putting all of my pressure on my booty and my butt bone into their thighs and say, now you got to roll back and forth with me and don't let me fall over. my balance was really good back then. I was in better shape. And they would try to do that because even at 140 pounds, I weigh a lot more than that now. But at 140 pounds, trying to balance, that's still 140 pounds concentrated the way I would hold myself in one small area. So with all of that there, trying to move back and forth, it was hilarious to watch, but also effective. So barring that 140 pounds in one area that you don't have to balance you don't have to spend a lot of effort to balance on, you're probably not going to be able to get to that area effectively on a foam roller. I do advocate there are little balls like the trigger point balls that you can get. I wouldn't waste a lot of money on them. A lacrosse ball is going to be too small to get in there. One, the balls, the butt peanuts, as I used to call mine. I don't think I have one in here. I'll see if I can find one later and post a photo of it. But those could do, but it's still not going to quite get it. If I were you, I would stretch very gently. The sunrise, and I will actually tag Nikia and Chrissy in their yoga series. If you're doing the sunrise salutation, which has you stretching up and then sweeping down to grab your ankles, that is a good thing to work on your hamstrings as well as your little bitty butt muscles, which might be underutilized if your hamstrings are overloaded. So that's a lot of words to go along with the no, but that's also what I would do instead. Starting back from scratch, run, walk is keeping my heart rate down. If only one glute is tight, what strength is the most important for me to be doing? If only one glute is tight, then we need to think about the alignment of your hip bones. I want to make sure first, if you lie down on the ground and just sort of touch both sides of your pelvis and see if one side is actually a little bit higher up than the other. Our bodies are not perfectly symmetrical, but the pelvis is two bones that can shift at will. So if one side is more strained than the other, one set of hamstrings is hurting, but is strained, but the other is not. One glute is strained and the other is not. My go-to is either pelvic floor or a slight pelvic rotation. We might want to see, and I know COVID, if we can see someone to double check that for us, then that's never a bad thing. There are also series online like Fix Your Hips, which are worth your time. And if there was one thing I was going to beg you to do going into the new year, it would be slow burn, because it was going to be fine and we need the money. But also for your own benefit as well, I would suggest taking a look at the Fix Your Hips series. It came highly recommended by Dr. Katie Hansen. Christine and a couple of other clients have been using it and say that they see remarkable differences. So it might be worth it to try that now, as opposed to in a time when we're probably not going to be able to see a pelvic floor PT for a while. So that is it's not strength so much that I would focus on as it is trying to get to why one side is firing and activating to the point of overstrain when the other side is not. It's usually not, form is a function of strength. So if you feel like you need more strength, first we start with the form, double check that, and then prescribe more strength. Okay, in maintain, please answer in your best Dr. Ruth voice. Sore sex. There seems to be a positive correlation with me. Oh my God. Okay. Let me brace myself. Y'all didn't warn me, Aaron. Okay. There seems to be a positive correlation with me. After a strong, good run, I have a strong, good evening. I mean, most of the time I'm already lubed up, so I've got that going for me. Yay, not menopause. Not sure if there's a real question here, just bragging. Yay, you. I have 4 kids. Of all things, the last thing I want to do, even when I get into bed at night, I'm kind of like, off me. Tomo, we've been working on getting my hormones back in alignment after the period of the hyper laxity that I had. And when that shift came back into place, it was very unusual for me. And I was horny as hell. And my poor husband was like hiding from me in the bathroom some days, just being like, I'm good, waiting for me to fall asleep so I wouldn't bug him. That is the only time we've ever had that in our marriage, because I've either been too tired or too pregnant, or he has been too tired from traveling for us to be like, hey, I just came back for a run. Let's do this. So yeah. I think it's great that you're lubed up. I'm hearing from a lot of my friends who are starting into perimenopause that they're the opposite. They can't get anything. I mean, there's no good word for it. Damp, moist down there. The word moist is disgusting. Damp isn't a whole lot better. I think about any place mold would grow, which is clearly not what we're talking about here, but rather, it's not really unusual at all. So if you've ever seen Legally Blonde, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, she's like, exercise gives you endorphins. Endorphins make you happy. Happy people don't kill their husbands. They just don't. I remind myself of this often with my husband being home all the time. So to that end, your exercise can release endorphins. Not everyone will be as lucky as you are and be like, I had so many endorphins, now I want more activity. For me, it's usually I've been by myself, I cleared my head, I moved, I feel good. Now I want to take a shower before everybody starts jumping at me. So we're clearly in a different phase of our parenting life cycle, and I'm a little jealous of yours, not gonna lie. Before the topic of conversation, if you or anyone you know comes back from a run feeling charged, energized, and horny, tell us about it. Because that's not my life. I'm thrilled for you, thrilled for yours. It's just not my experience. But we love, I bet, Nakia, this is probably a question for Coach Nakia. Where are you at? Oh my goodness. But no, seriously, that is amazing. Good for you. It's not taking me as long to warm up, even with the temperatures dropping. Can I cut my warm up shorter? Well, the whole idea of warming up is not to physically warm up your body, although it can be. Like in practical terms, in the winter, obviously, we don't want to run outside. If we start off too cold, we're going to overdo it in order to warm up. But that's not really what we're talking about here. The physiological purpose of the warm-up is to lubricate your tendons, joints, and ligaments and get them ready to do work. It's about waking up your muscles and getting them and getting into a rhythm where they know what's about to come. That's why we do these dynamic warm-ups, and we prescribe them doing the same way each day in the form of silly toes. So with that, I don't really recommend cutting the warm-up. The cool down is the thing that we don't cut when we're in a performance cycle, because if you cut down the cool down, then you might as well cut down on the harder intervals in between, because you are, by reducing your recovery time, you're reducing the benefits and the impact of the work you just did. When it comes to the warm-up, though, we're not really training for performance right now. There are probably not going to be any races in the spring. Even if we do our own virtual races, if you really want to go hard, I will always facilitate that. But I also don't like making up pressure just for the sake of having some, because there's plenty right now, and we don't know what else is going to be coming down the pipeline. So to that end, if it's not taking you as long to warm up, great. Just don't think of it as the warm up, but rather cutting that a little bit shorter. I would be okay with that if you made the warm up like 5 minutes, but add that time back into the cool down at the end. Don't add more intervals. If it's an easy effort run or an avocado toast, you can absolutely throw in a second set of accelerators. It's not a big deal. A second set of strides. But I'm not really a fan of eliminating the warm up, because they're already pretty short at 10 minutes. And we cut that too much shorter, it becomes easy just to not do it. Like with strength, I gave 3-minute strength routines, and it was so short, people would be like, I was like, what is the shortest routine that would be manageable? And instead what it turned into was, it's only 3 minutes. What can 3 minutes do? Very, very little. So people just wouldn't do it, and there'd be no strength. So I don't want the warm up to turn into what strength was in earlier in my career. So if it's something that you are just eager to get to the beat of the workout and you already feel warm, just add that time back into the end, because if the blood's already flowing, that is terrific, but that doesn't necessarily mean that your body is ready to do the work. Just because you feel good, you think you're ready to go out the door, your body might not be in total agreement. If all of us were that in tune with our body, then I wouldn't have a job. Yay. All right, those are all the questions over here. Let's move over to some of the comments. Oh my God. You need a hamstring routine? Okay. We can get a hamstring routine. I will make a point to mention this to Chris and Nakia, that there are some very simple stretches we could do that would make a big difference. I'm more concerned about the ongoing management, though, because that your hamstrings really shouldn't be tight or achy or hurting. So they would have been if they're overstrained. That type of overstrain is either coming from working too hard, which working with me, you're probably not. Something else that you're doing, like if you're doing kettlebells or lifting weights, TRX, all that crazy stuff that Coach Takia does, cycling, spinning, that could do it. That's much more likely to do it than running. But yeah, I'm more worried about an inefficiency causing this, and making sure that we eliminate it before any real damage is done. Sorry, I've got the hiccups. I still smell those chocolate chip cookies. Yeah, you warned me. Great. Thank you for warning me. Last minute add-in question. Any ideas to help stretch a grouchy lower back? Apparently, laying a new patio isn't the best idea right now, and my go-to foam roller moves are a no-go right now. Being pregnant. If you guys didn't know it, we're having a fitness protection baby. Yay! Erin is pregnant, and we're so excited. And she's showing, and it's super cute. And I cannot wait to... Oh my gosh, I totally nuked my hammies on the hills in the North Carolina mountains. Totally went too hard. It was on me. Yep, good. Take the week off. Enjoy it. Don't lay a new patio. It's probably not the time to do it because it's a whole lot of bending over. So with stretching the grouchy lower back, that's going to be really hard because you're pregnant, and where you are in your pregnancy with that cute little bump, you're going to have to share a picture now, and that's going to have to be the cover of the podcast. With your cute little bump also means that your pelvis is going to be hyperextending and your center of gravity is going to be changing, which means that it's going to be really hard to stretch out your lower back, because if anything that we could do to stretch that out will compress the baby, and your body is not going to let you do that. Everything in nature is conspiring to keep that baby alive. You'd be surprised how much you have to do in order to get things in through the placenta. The placenta is kind of like a really amazing filter. It's a long random story why I know anything about this. This was a good friend's specialty for a very long time. She said the sheer volume of vodka that you would have to consume in order to induce fetal alcohol syndrome in a child is horrifying. Like it's not normal. Like, have your glass of wine. That glass of wine is going to be okay. If you have a glass of wine every single night, over time you're headed towards the alcohol woman. Let's not do that. But she would always talk about how that the placenta is sort of like the thing in Alien. It's going to rob your body, your bones, your brain, your tissues of anything it needs in order to sustain that body. And that is actually the odds of that child living, if something happens to you, are still pretty darn good, because the placenta is that amazing and that good at what it does. It has one function. It was perfectly made to keep that baby alive, and it will do it at your expense. So I tell you that to tell you this. This could be, the problem is the alcohol before the placenta takes over. Exactly. The placenta can do a lot, but you really got to douse it before the placenta just kind of like shrugs and gives up completely, if you're doing this while you're pregnant. Or at least that was her field of research and study. So I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I probably shouldn't even be quoting it, but I've never forgotten that. Like the sheer just look on her face when she showed me, this is the volume you have to consume for where it starts, where the symptoms start to present in an unborn child. Anyway, it definitely changed the way I looked at things and what I worried about and what I didn't. It's like, oh my gosh, did I use the nail polish with the thing in it? Because there's this thing about butter nail polish had just come out not with parabens or something. And it's like, all right, you had a little parabens. The placenta is going to filter that out. Let me show you what you have to do to the placenta. And that's when I got into her research, and then decided I never wanted to carry a baby ever again because it's scary. Anyway, I tell you all that what this has to do with foam roller moves. If most of the foam roller moves are a no-go, then pretty much anything else I could help you do is a no-go too. Definitely check out some prenatal yoga. There are a few moves that you can carefully do that I am not going to demonstrate, but I have to wonder, with our two specialists who just did all these 300 crazy hours. That's just so many hours, 300 hours of instruction. I'm sure they have something in their repertoire that could help your lower back, and we will tag them in that question too. Yay. Anything else? Anybody else want to chat? We're not advising you. I'm not making light of alcoholism in any way, shape, or form. I want to be really clear on that. I'm not specifically advocating for drinking while pregnant either, but rather the way science is often presented to us is like fear-mongering to women about, if you do this, then this horrible thing could happen, which can, in a world where we're already so hyper aware of the consequences of so many of our actions, big and small, adding more onto that during a time we're vulnerable just feels really unnecessary. And that's where I was going with that. Odds are pretty good you are not going to do anything super stupid, or that thing you're worried that could do long-term damage won't, because your body's perfectly made, and so is your placenta. And that placenta, man, it's fierce. It is fierce. Speaking of fierce, so is my desire for the chocolate chip cookies I'm smelling downstairs. You're coached. You are loved. And even if you don't feel anything right now because you're burned out, even if you haven't been able to make yourself do anything, which has you feeling all the guilt, I promise you that guilt's not helping you at all, and it's not changing the outcome. Let's find a different way to reframe how you are talking about, thinking about, and judging what the decisions that you make. Count your wins, celebrate them, and try to stop focusing on the things you didn't do and go get what your body needs. Go do whatever it is that you need to do right now. Mwah! See you guys very soon. Check your spam folders. You probably have some counter invitations from me. If you are if your account is in good standing, if you are a paid subscriber right now, and you did not receive any of these emails and you did not receive any of the counter invitations, do reach out immediately to me or your coaches and let us know. Thanks all.